After everything Rhaenyra has sacrificed to claim the Iron Throne, you would think victory would finally be within her grasp. But in Westeros, victory never comes without a price. The dragons are burning. The armies are collapsing. Alliances are falling apart. And the people Rhaenyra once trusted are beginning to question whether she is still the same woman who started this war. In the brutal Season 3 finale of House of the Dragon, the battle for the throne reaches a terrifying new level as Aegon returns. Tumbleton becomes a battlefield of fire and blood, Ulf betrays the Blacks, and Rhaenyra makes a decision that could permanently change who she is. But perhaps the most heartbreaking moment comes from Helaena. Because while everyone else is fighting to control the future, Helaena appears to have already seen it. And what she sees is horrifying. Welcome back to Shed Movies, where we break down the biggest twists, shocking deaths, hidden meanings, and unforgettable moments from your favorite shows. Today we're breaking down the explosive House of the Dragon Season 3 finale, and trust me, this episode proves that sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the one holding the sword. It's the person who has stopped caring about what the sword does. So let's get into it. The finale begins with devastating news for Rhaenyra. Aegon is alive. After everything she believed about his fate, the half-burned king has somehow returned to the game. The news immediately shakes Rhaenyra. She rushes to Daemon, struggling to control her emotions as the reality begins sinking in. She thought the war was finally turning in her favor. She thought the victory was close. But Aegon's survival changes everything. His supporters immediately have a reason to raise their banners again, and suddenly the war that Rhaenyra believed she had nearly won is alive once more. Daemon, however, refuses to let her collapse under the pressure. He reminds her that this isn't the time to surrender. This is her biggest test. If she truly wants to be queen, then she has to prove she can survive moments exactly like this. And Rhaenyra listens. She sends Daemon toward Tumbleton, where the next major confrontation is already taking shape. But while Rhaenyra prepares for war, someone close to her is beginning to lose faith. Baela approaches Rhaenyra with one simple question. What about Corlys? Her grandfather is still being held, and Baela wants to know when the queen plans to rescue him. Rhaenyra's answer doesn't satisfy her. She promises Corlys will be freed after Tumbleton falls. But Baela has heard enough promises. Years of war and loss have clearly taken their toll, and she finally releases the anger she's been keeping inside. She accuses Rhaenyra of abandoning people once they are no longer useful to her. And Rhaenyra fires back, reminding Baela and Rhaena of the consequences surrounding Jace. It's a painful confrontation because both sides believe they are justified. But beneath the argument is something much bigger. Rhaenyra is losing the emotional loyalty of the people closest to her. And that may become more dangerous than any army outside the castle walls. Meanwhile, the Valyrian fleet arrives in King's Landing. Their first instinct is to head toward Tumbleton and rescue Corlys. But Alan sees the situation differently. Someone needs to stay behind and restore order. And then he makes an important declaration. Alan openly claims his place as Corlys' son and announces that he intends to become the next Lord of the Tides. For Alan, this isn't just about inheritance. It's about stepping out of Corlys' shadow. But while the Valyrians deal with their own future, the armies of the Greens and Blacks are preparing for another bloody confrontation. And this time, Tumbleton is going to pay the price. Outside Tumbleton, the Rivermen and Winter Wolves gather. The Green forces prepare for the coming attack. Ormond Hightower knows they are facing an enormous threat, so he turns toward Daeron. He knights him and reminds him what they are fighting for. Daeron has to become more than a young man carrying a famous family name. He has to become a leader. But there is one massive problem. Ulf is missing. And Ulf is supposed to be one of the Green side's biggest advantages. Instead, he is drinking in a tavern, saying everything he's been keeping inside about Rhaenyra and Daemon. His arrogance is on full display. And considering what happens next, perhaps the Greens should have been more worried about Ulf than the army outside their walls. Back in King's Landing, another shocking development takes place. Mysaria is suddenly dismissed. Even Elinda seems surprised by the decision. Mysaria is offered money and passage toward Pentos. But she refuses to simply disappear. Instead, she slips into the chaos of King's Landing. And once again, the White Worm proves that removing her from the palace doesn't necessarily mean removing her from the game. Mysaria has survived by knowing things other people don't know. And in Westeros, information can be more dangerous than an army. Then comes one of the episode's most important moments. Rhaenyra decides she will finally be anointed queen. But before leaving, she speaks with Joffrey. And she tells him about the Song of Ice and Fire. This is significant because she had previously shared this secret with Jace. She's passing the responsibility forward. She's telling her son that being king or queen isn't simply about sitting on the Iron Throne. There is supposed to be a larger purpose. But ironically, Rhaenyra is about to make a decision that brings her further away from the ideal ruler she believes she is supposed to become. Alan is assigned to protect Rhaenyra and Joffrey. And before the ceremony, Adam warns him. He believes Aegon's return has changed Rhaenyra. He senses that she's becoming darker. Alan doesn't seem convinced. But then they enter the September. And everything changes. Rhaenyra demands to be anointed. But the Septon refuses. He argues that Aegon's survival is proof that the gods don't support Rhaenyra's claim. For Rhaenyra, this is another challenge to her legitimacy. And this time she doesn't negotiate. She orders them killed. Then she orders Alan to strike the first blow against the High Septon. This is a crucial moment for Rhaenyra. The woman who once spoke about duty, prophecy, and protecting the realm is now using violence against religious figures simply because they refuse to validate her claim. And that's exactly what Adam feared. Power is changing Rhaenyra. The question is whether she can still recognize herself. Meanwhile, Aemond wakes after being poisoned by his own mother. Alice Rivers is still there. Still helping him. Naturally, Aemond wants to know why. And Alice finally reveals part of her mysterious history. She tells him about Aegon the Conqueror and the destruction of Harrenhal. But the story isn't really about Aegon. It's about a survivor. One of Harren the Black's sons survived the destruction, badly burned but alive. His mother desperately searched for a way to save him. When conventional medicine failed, she turned toward ancient magic. But the magic came with a price. Her son eventually died, and when she tried to end her own life, she discovered that the price of the magic had already been claimed. She lost everything. Her title, her position, her life as she knew it. And she was cursed to remain at Harrenhal. Aemond realizes something astonishing. Alice is more than 100 years old. Suddenly, her strange knowledge and connection to the supernatural make much more sense. But before Aemond can fully process what he's learned, they hear a dragon. And it isn't Vhagar. Aegon has arrived. And he's riding Sunfire. The broken, burned king has survived, and he's still carrying one thing inside him. Revenge. He came to Harrenhal expecting to confront Aemond. But when the brothers finally stand face to face, something unexpected happens. Aemond doesn't attack. Instead he falls to his knees. He asks Aegon for forgiveness. And perhaps the most surprising part is Aegon's reaction. He expected revenge to feel satisfying. But it doesn't. Seeing his brother broken doesn't give him the satisfaction he imagined. Still, the war isn't over. Aegon tells Aemond that they need to go to Tumbleton. Their brother Daeron has crowned himself king. They have a common enemy. And their next objective is clear. Bring the Greens together, take King's Landing and kill Rhaenyra. The armies finally collide. Ormond places children on the walls, hoping the enemy won't attack because they wouldn't want to be seen as monsters. But the strategy doesn't stop the assault. The winter wolves charge. Arrows rain down. Boulders crash into the attackers. Oil burns them as they try to climb the walls. But they refuse to stop. These men aren't simply fighting to survive. They're fighting knowing they may never leave the battlefield alive. And eventually they make it over the walls. Tumbleton begins to fall. Before everything completely collapses, Gwaine attempts to negotiate. He takes Corlys to Daemon and proposes dividing the 7 kingdoms. Rhaenyra could rule one half from King's Landing. Daeron could rule the other from Old Town. Corlys even proposes a marriage between Rhaena and Daeron. It sounds like a desperate attempt to end the war before it destroys everyone. But Daemon refuses. He takes Corlys hostage and sends Daeron back toward Tumbleton. The battle is no longer about compromise. It is about survival. Then the biggest twist of the battle arrives. Ulf finally takes to the skies. At first, the Blacks celebrate. They believe their dragon rider has arrived to help them win. But then the impossible happens. Ulf turns his dragon against them. Fire rains down on the very army he was supposed to support. The battlefield becomes chaos. Soldiers run for their lives. Corlys barely escapes. And Ulf doesn't stop there. He turns his dragon toward Tumbleton itself. The town burns. The man who was supposed to be an advantage has become a weapon against everyone. And ironically, his destruction creates an opportunity for Daemon. Daemon is fighting Ser Roxton when Dragonfire causes part of the wall to collapse. The destruction separates Daemon from his opponent and saves him. Elsewhere, Roddy encounters Ormond. The two men fight brutally. Ormond manages to injure Roddy badly. But Roddy refuses to stop. He came prepared to die. And even after suffering horrific injuries, he keeps fighting. Then Ulf's Dragonfire turns everything into an inferno. Aemond watches his own side being destroyed. And before he can fully process what is happening, RHAENY strikes. Then another dragon joins the destruction. Silverwing rains fire over the battlefield. Both Aemond and RHAENY are consumed. Later, Aemond's burned body is discovered. Tumbleton is no longer simply a battlefield. It is a graveyard. But the most devastating part of the finale isn't on the battlefield. It's happening inside the Red Keep. Helaena has stopped eating. Her body is deteriorating. Her mind is even worse. She has been experiencing visions, and now those visions are beginning to come true. Then Mysaria encounters her. And the White Worm gives Helaena a warning. Aegon is alive. She also tells Helaena not to trust RHAENYRA. RHAENYRA is holding her hostage, and Mysaria believes she will never truly set her free. Later, RHAENYRA visits Helaena and tells her to eat. But Helaena refuses. Instead, she tells RHAENYRA how much she has changed. She says their father would never have approved of what she has become. Those words strike directly at RHAENYRA's deepest insecurity. And rather than listen, RHAENYRA orders Helaena to be force-fed. She leaves. And that is the last time she sees her sister alive. When RHAENYRA returns, Alinda brings her devastating news. Helaena is dead. She has jumped from her window. And suddenly, the strange visions we've seen throughout the story take on a terrifying new meaning. Helaena had been preparing for this. She had woven her own death into her tapestry. She knew she would fall. But she had also painted something else. RHAENYRA sitting on the Iron Throne. Except this isn't the peaceful victory RHAENYRA imagined. Around her are flames, dragons, destruction. The throne isn't surrounded by prosperity. It's surrounded by a kingdom burning. RHAENYRA finally realizes what Helena's visions may have been warning her about. And for one brief moment, she appears shaken. Maybe she isn't the chosen ruler she believed herself to be. Maybe the throne isn't a symbol of destiny. Maybe it is a curse. But instead of accepting what she sees, RHAENYRA makes a decision. She throws the tapestry down. She closes the window. And metaphorically, she closes herself off from the truth. She has come too far. She can't turn back now. Meanwhile, Alicent is making her way toward King's Landing. And then she sees them. Blue butterflies. The same imagery Helaena had previously spoken about. Alicent doesn't need anyone to explain what happened. Somehow she understands. Her daughter is gone. And with Helena's death, another piece of the old world disappears. Since this is the Season 3 finale, there isn't another Season 3 episode to predict. But the ending gave us some major clues about where the story could go next. And that brings us to the end of one of the darkest chapters in this story. Tumbleton has burned. Aegon is alive. Aemond has been forced to confront his brother. Ulf has betrayed the Blacks. Corlys has survived. Daemon has returned to King's Landing. But none of that compares to what happened to RHAENYRA. Because the woman who began this journey believing she was destined to save the realm is now becoming the very kind of ruler she once feared. And Helaena may have seen it coming all along. Her final image of RHAENYRA surrounded by fire and death could be more than a warning. Could be a prophecy. So the biggest question moving forward isn't simply, who will sit on the Iron Throne? It's this. When the war finally ends, will there be anything left worth ruling? What did you think of the finale? Do you believe Helena's vision will come true? Was RHAENYRA truly becoming a tyrant, or was she simply doing whatever was necessary to survive? And do you think Aegon and Aemond can actually work together? Drop your theories in the comments. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Shed Movies, and turn on notifications for more breakdowns, recaps, theories, and shocking moments from your favorite series. Until next time, this is Shed Movies, where every story has a secret, and every throne comes with a price.